My name is Harold Thompson. I am 67 years old, a retired business owner, and I live here on the Upper East Side of New York City. What I am about to tell you today is the story of the night that utterly changed my life when I discovered the person I loved most in the world was planning to murder me. If you have ever been through a betrayal that shook your very foundation, please hit the like button to cheer up this old heart. Subscribe to the Grandpa's Journals channel so you don't miss my upcoming life stories. Tell me in the comments where you are watching this video from and what time it is there right now. Have you ever mistrusted someone very close to you? It brings me great joy to know which corner of America and what time of day you are listening to me. I have always been a hard worker. I built my automotive parts distribution company from the ground up. I started with a small warehouse in Queens, sleeping on the floor of the store for the first few years. My biggest mistake was always trusting people too much, believing that everyone had a good heart like mine. Perhaps because I came from a humble family, I always wanted to believe that people genuinely liked me for who I was, not for the $6 million I had managed to accumulate in life. When I met my second wife, Cassidy, my company was already well established. She was a beautiful young woman, well-mannered, and always claimed she did not care about money, saying she loved me for my simple way of being. All my friends commented on how lucky I was to have found such a special woman. She took care of me with a tenderness I hadn't felt in years. Not since I lost my first wife, Eleanor, to cancer. That is why, on the night of our 5th wedding anniversary, when I noticed that strange, metallic odor in the dish she had prepared with such meticulous love, my world came crashing down. That was the moment I realized that the person sleeping next to us is not always dreaming of us. My childhood was simple, growing up in a working-class neighborhood right here in New York. My father worked at a manufacturing plant, and my mother sewed clothes for extra income. Since I was a little boy, I learned that honest work is the foundation of everything. I started by selling newspapers on the subway, then became a messenger for an auto parts company. I always had that drive to get ahead in life, but I never lost the humility of my beginnings. In my 20s, I married Eleanor. We married young and had a wonderful daughter. But life is sometimes too cruel. Eleanor died in a car accident when our girl was just 10 years old. That was the darkest period of my life. I was alone, raising my daughter and running the business, which was just beginning to prosper. For many years, I avoided serious relationships. My daughter grew up, got married, and moved overseas. I was increasingly alone in this big house, with only my work for company. I was a financial success, but empty inside. It was during that period of loneliness that I met Cassidy at a business event. She was just over 30. I was approaching 60. She was beautiful, smart, and always told me she admired my determination and my good heart. When she agreed to marry me, I thought God had given me a second chance at life. For the first few years of our marriage, Cassidy was truly the perfect wife I had always dreamed of having. But as the saying goes, not all that glitters is gold. And I was about to discover that behind that sweet smile lurked a heart colder than a Chicago winter. The first years with Cassidy were the happiest of my adult life. She had a special way of caring for me, always attentive to my tastes and needs. When I got home from the office, she would have already prepared my coffee exactly the way I liked it, strong and slightly sweet. On weekends, she would make that homemade lasagna that reminded me of my childhood. The house always smelled of good food, of a real home. Cassidy seemed genuinely interested in my life story. We spent hours talking about how I built the company, about the challenges I faced to get out of poverty. She listened to everything with admiration in her eyes, always praising me for my willpower. She said she felt lucky to have such a determined and successful husband. "You are an example, Hal," she would always say. "A man who succeeded in life, with honesty." My friends at the club always commented on how fortunate I was. "What a special woman you found, Hal," they would say. "A princess like that next to a guy like you is a blessing from above." And I truly believe that. Cassidy never asked for anything extravagant, never complained when I had to travel for work, and seemed satisfied just being by my side. When I offered to buy her expensive jewelry or clothes, she would refuse. "I do not need that, honey. I have you. That is what matters." She also got along well with my daughter, who lived overseas but came to visit us occasionally. Cassidy always prepared special meals for those occasions. She went out of her way to show she was a good stepmother. She would cook for days, leaving the house spotless. Over the phone, my daughter always told me she approved of my choice, that Cassidy seemed like a serious and dedicated woman. "Dad, you deserve to be happy," she would say. "Cassidy is perfect for you." On our first wedding anniversary, she organized a small surprise party, only with our closest friends. She prepared everything herself, from the decorations to the dinner. She made my favorite dish, beef tenderloin with perfectly cooked risotto and crispy asparagus. I felt like the most loved man in the world that day. Everyone commented on how attentive she was, how well she took care of me. "You found a rare gem, Hal," said my friend David. "You do not see women like that anymore." During those first few years, Cassidy showed an almost excessive maternal affection toward me. If I coughed, she would immediately rush for cough syrup. If I complained of back pain, she would prepare a hot compress. She always asked if I had taken my blood pressure medication, if I had scheduled my routine checkups. I found all that care beautiful. How lucky I am to have a private nurse, I thought. Cassidy would smile that sweet smile and reply, "I want you to be healthy by my side forever, my love, so we can live many years together." She knew all my habits, my schedules, my food preferences. She knew I liked a glass of milk before bed, that I preferred my steak medium rare, and that I had a sensitive stomach. That is why she always cooked with my well-being in mind. "I made this without heavy spices, so it will not upset your stomach," she would say. "I cut the meat extra thin, just the way you like it." This deep knowledge of my preferences would one day be used in a way I could never have imagined. Time went by, and I grew accustomed to this perfect life. Cassidy was punctual, organized, and never gave me any reason to be suspicious. She rarely left the house. Her friends were few and known to me. When she needed to go to the mall or the doctor, she always let me know where she was going and when she would be back. She was never late, never changed plans without telling me. That predictable routine gave me a sense of security I hadn't felt in years. But what I did not know was that behind that perfect routine, behind that excessive care and exemplary dedication, Cassidy was studying every detail of my life. Every habit, every preference, every weakness was being cataloged in her mind for a purpose that would only come to light years later. After the 3rd year of marriage, some things started to change subtly. Cassidy remained the dedicated wife she had always been, but she began to show a different kind of curiosity about my business. She started asking questions about my investments, how my company was structured, and the figures I was handling. "It is just so I can better understand what you do, honey," she would say when I looked surprised. "A wife should know about her husband's life, right?" She also started to take an interest in my personal documents. Several times I found her going through my office papers at home, always with an excuse ready on the tip of her tongue. "I was organizing your things, Hal. What a mess. Let me take care of that for you." It seemed strange because I had never asked for help with organizing, but I thought she just wanted to be helpful. My constant mistake, trusting people too much. It was around this time that she started bringing up the topic of my will more frequently. She would ask if everything was in order, and if my daughter knew where the important documents were kept. "God forbid anything happens to you," she would say with that usual sweet voice. "But it is good to have everything organized, right? Just a precaution. You never know what tomorrow holds." I thought it was just a wife's natural concern. After all, she was much younger than me and perhaps thought more about the future. Her interest in life insurance also increased considerably. She wanted to know the exact amounts, the beneficiaries, the types of coverage, whether it included natural death or just accidental death. "Hal, you should increase the insurance," she would always insist. "We are married now. It is for our protection. What if something happens to me? You have to think about our future too." She even started researching other insurance companies, bringing home brochures and comparing prices. I ended up agreeing and significantly increased the policy, making her the primary beneficiary. At the time, it seemed like the most natural thing in the world for a husband to do that for his wife. Cassidy also started to worry excessively about my health in an almost obsessive way. She insisted I get more frequent checkups. She always accompanied me to medical appointments. She memorized all my test results as if she were a nurse. "I need to take good care of you, my treasure," she would say. "Men do not take good care of themselves, right? You think you are made of steel." She knew all my health issues by heart: the high blood pressure, the elevated cholesterol, the tendency toward diabetes I inherited from my father. She controlled my diet almost scientifically, always with the excuse that she wanted to keep me healthy so we could live many years together. During this period, I also noticed she started going out a bit more. Nothing too noticeable, just some trips to the mall that lasted longer. Some visits to a distant cousin I never really knew. Some doctor visits that seemed more frequent than normal. "I need to have my social life too, Hal, right?" she would justify when I commented on her outings. "A woman needs to talk to other women once in a while. Otherwise, I will go crazy here at home, just talking to you." I agreed. I thought it was fair for her to have her distractions and personal commitments, but there was something about her behavior that subtly began to bother me. Sometimes I would find her on the phone, speaking softly in the bedroom, and she would always hang up when I approached. "It was just the stylist confirming my appointment," she would quickly explain. "Women's nonsense, scheduling a manicure, eyebrows, that kind of stuff." Other times it was the cousin or a friend from the gym. When I asked for more details about where she had gone or whom she had talked to, she always had a ready answer. But I perceived a slight nervousness in her eyes, a rush to change the subject. The gifts she gave me also changed completely. Before, they were simple and personal things: a shirt she knew I would like, a book on American history, a CD of classic jazz. Now they were always expensive and imported items, as if she were trying to compensate for something or show forced affection. Once, she gave me a very expensive Swiss watch, the kind that costs as much as a used car. "I saw it in a display case and thought of you," she said. "I wanted to give you something special. You deserve nice things." When I asked, surprised, where she had gotten the money for it, she said she had saved up for months from the allowance I gave her for personal things. What bothered me the most was how she reacted when I asked any question about her routine. Before, Cassidy would answer everything naturally, spontaneously, even sharing details I did not ask for. Now there was always a pause, as if she was thinking of the correct answer before speaking, as if it were rehearsed. "Are you suspicious of me, Hal?" she would ask with that smile that was beginning to look forced. "What nonsense, honey. I am your same dedicated wife." And I would always apologize. I felt guilty for doubting her, for being a possessive and nagging husband. The conversations between us also changed tone. Before, we talked about everything: my business, our plans, the news of the day, childhood memories. Now she always steered the conversations back to the same topic: my assets. She wanted to know about my investments, if the money was well invested, if I had thought about diversifying. "I am just worried, honey," she would justify. "You worked so hard to build all this. It would be a shame if you lost something due to lack of care." She even suggested I consult other financial advisors and move some investments around. But my instinct, the same one that made me prosper in business for decades, began to send small, more frequent warning signals. Nothing concrete yet, just an uncomfortable feeling that something was out of place. It was as if the perfect Cassidy of the early years was just a very well-rehearsed act. And beneath that mask of a dedicated wife was someone I did not truly know. Sometimes, when she did not know I was watching, I noticed an expression on her face that I could not decipher. A momentary coldness that vanished as soon as our eyes met. But my stubborn heart and my trusting nature insisted on believing it was just paranoia from an old man in love. After all, what would a beautiful young woman like Cassidy gain by deceiving me? She had everything she wanted: a comfortable life, a husband who adored her, financial security. Why would she risk all that? These doubts haunted my head, but I always pushed them away, preferring to believe the romantic version of our love story. What I did not imagine was that all those little signs were preparing me for the most shocking discovery of my life. A discovery that would happen precisely on the day our marriage farce turned 5 years old. On the night that should have been a celebration, but almost became my farewell to this world. In the final months before our 5th wedding anniversary, Cassidy's behavior became even stranger, and it truly began to worry me in a way I had never felt before. She started insisting I have constant medical checkups. Almost every week, she came up with a new concern about my health. She said she was uneasy about my blood pressure, my heart, my liver, my pancreas. "Hal, you have looked a little pale lately," she would say, looking me right in the eyes with a concern that seemed exaggerated and forced. "How about we schedule those more comprehensive tests? Heart, liver, kidneys, those important things a man your age needs to pay closer attention to? You never know when something serious might appear." It seemed extremely curious to me, because I felt good, energetic, with no pain or discomfort, sleeping well, eating normally. But she insisted so much, so vehemently, that I agreed not to cross her and to avoid unnecessary arguments. I scheduled appointments with a cardiologist, gastroenterologist, urologist. I had all the tests she suggested, and some I did not even know existed. The results of absolutely every test came back completely normal, some even better than expected for my age. But when I showed the results to Cassidy, she looked almost disappointed, as if she had been hoping to find some serious health problem, some illness that would justify her excessive worry. It was around that time that I noticed something very strange that began to deeply bother me every day. Cassidy started cooking completely different dishes from her usual repertoire, recipes she had never made before in all our years of marriage, always with stronger spices, more intense and pungent smells, exotic ingredients I had never seen her use, mixtures of flavors that did not match anything she usually prepared. "I am innovating in the kitchen, honey," she would say, laughing in a way that did not seem natural, with a slightly forced smile. "I got tired of always making the same things for all these years. A woman needs to reinvent herself and try new recipes, right? I saw some different recipes in a magazine and wanted to try them." But when I found the taste of a meal odd or questioned a different seasoning, making a face or leaving something on the plate because the taste was unpleasant, she would become visibly nervous, agitated, almost furious. She would say I was too demanding, difficult to please, that a man my age should be more adventurous and open to new culinary experiences. "You are becoming so fussy, Hal," she would complain with disproportionate irritation. "Before you ate anything I made and praised me. Now you just complain, you just criticize, you do not even try to like it." Several times during those months, I left food on my plate because the taste was extremely odd, with a slightly bitter, metallic aftertaste, as if some substance were mixed into it that I could not identify. It was a flavor that lingered on my tongue, leaving my mouth feeling strange for hours. Cassidy always got extremely upset when that happened, almost personally offended, as if I were rejecting much more than just the food. "I try so hard to make delicious and special food for you," she would complain with tears in her eyes that seemed genuine. "I wake up early, go to the market to buy fresh ingredients, spend hours in the kitchen preparing everything with care, and you do not even taste it properly. You do not even try to like it. I do not know what else to do to please you, Hal." I always offered sincere apologies, feeling extremely guilty for hurting her. I promised I would try to be more open to new things, but that strange, unpleasant taste in the food continued to bother me deeply. My stomach instinctively rejected those new dishes. There was something wrong that I could not explain, but I felt it viscerally. The questions about my will also intensified in an almost obsessive way that began to make me very uncomfortable. She wanted to know exactly how all the assets were divided. Specific amounts, percentages, if I had thought about updating the documents recently, if my daughter knew all the minute details of the inheritance, how much exactly each person would receive if something happened to me. "Honey, we need to talk very seriously about these important things," she insisted with a frequency that was starting to deeply annoy me. "I have been your wife for almost 5 years. I built a life by your side. I took care of you. I dedicated myself completely to this marriage. It would not be fair or right if I did not have a guaranteed significant share in case you pass away first." The way she talked about my possible death gave me a very strange and disturbing feeling, as if it was not just a natural concern, but as if she were planning something specific, preparing for a situation she knew was going to happen. But I always pushed those dark thoughts away from my head. I forced myself to believe it was just paranoia from an older man, unjustified insecurity. During this tense period, I began to notice that Cassidy was leaving the house much more frequently than in all the previous years of our marriage, always with various excuses that began to sound rehearsed, repetitive, as if she had memorized a list of justifications. "I am going to see my cousin who is having serious marital problems. I have an urgent dental appointment because I have a bad toothache. I scheduled a therapeutic massage at the spa for this back pain that will not go away. I need to take care of some important things at the bank, boring bureaucratic matters. I am going shopping for the house. We are out of a lot of things." But when I gently offered to accompany her or asked for specific details about exactly where she was going, who she was meeting, or what time she would return, she always discouraged it in an evasive and sometimes even aggressive way. "Oh, you will be terribly bored, honey," she would say quickly, avoiding looking me in the eyes. "It is very dull women's stuff. Talk about personal problems, family gossip. Stay home, relax, and I will be back soon to make that nice coffee you love, just the way you like it." The outings also started lasting much, much longer than originally agreed. She would leave early in the morning, around 8 o'clock, saying she would be back for lunch at noon. But she only reappeared late in the afternoon, sometimes almost at dinner time, around 6 or 7 in the evening. It took much longer than I expected, she would always explain with the same phrase, as if it were a memorized excuse. You know how it is, right? One thing leads to another. I stopped to chat with so-and-so, whom I ran into on the street. I took the opportunity to run other errands since I was out of the house. I went to the mall too. But there was something in the tone of her voice, in the way she avoided details, that was not convincing. It was as if she were telling a completely fabricated, pre-rehearsed story. And I began to wonder where she was really spending all those hours. What she was doing for so long away from home. What struck me the most was the drastic and inexplicable change in how she treated me when she returned from those mysterious outings. Before, throughout all the early years of our marriage, Cassidy always greeted me with an affectionate kiss on the cheek. She would ask detailed questions about how my day had been. She showed genuine, loving interest in knowing what I had done during her absence. If I had eaten well, if I had taken my medication. Now she arrived visibly distant, sometimes even irritated and aggressive, for no apparent reason, as if my mere presence deeply annoyed her. "What is with that sour face, Hal?" she would ask impatiently when I looked puzzled or asked an innocent question about where she had been or how her day was. "Can I not even leave the house to take care of things I need to without you putting on that disapproving look? That is just silly, unnecessary jealousy from an insecure old man. You are becoming paranoid and controlling." One Thursday afternoon, I decided to do something romantic as a surprise and went to pick up Cassidy at the place she said she would be, because I wanted to take her out to dinner at an Italian restaurant she loved. I wanted us to enjoy a romantic date, something we had not done in a while. According to her, she was at the gynecologist's clinic getting a full battery of routine tests that the doctor had requested at her previous consultation. I arrived at the clinic, parked, politely went into the reception area and asked for my wife, giving her full name, surname, everything correct. The receptionist looked at me extremely confused, checked the day's schedule several times on the computer screen, checked the schedules for the whole week, and categorically stated that there was absolutely no one with that name scheduled for that day, that week, or the entire month. I felt the blood literally freeze in my veins, my heart raced uncontrollably, and my legs trembled. The sensation was like being hit in the stomach. I drove home in a state of complete shock, operating on autopilot, unable to fully process what I had just discovered. I pretended I had not left the house. I sat on the sofa and waited for her to arrive. When Cassidy got home late in the afternoon, around 5:30, I casually asked, in the most normal voice I could manage, how the tests had gone and if everything was fine with her health. "Everything is absolutely perfect, honey," she replied without hesitating for a second, looking me directly in the eyes, showing no nervousness or wavering. "The doctor said I have a clean bill of health, optimal blood pressure, normal blood tests. Everything completely within parameters. I just need to take more vitamin D because it is a little low. But nothing serious." The absurd naturalness with which she lied shamelessly to my face, even fabricating specific medical details, left me completely terrified and in shock. If she was capable of lying so easily, so convincingly about something like that, looking me in the eyes without blinking, what else was she lying about? How many other lies had I swallowed throughout all those years? From that terrible day onward, I started paying much, much closer attention to every minimal detail of her behavior. I practically became a detective in my own home. I noticed that Cassidy always took an extremely long shower when she got home from those outings. She would stay in the bathroom for over an hour. She would change her clothes completely, from underwear to shoes and accessories, and would put on new, strong perfume, as if she wanted to completely erase any trace or scent of where she had been. "I am all sweaty and stinky," she would always justify with the same phrase. It was a very hot and muggy day out there, crowded public transportation, I need to completely refresh myself. But even on extremely cold, rainy days with low temperatures, she would do exactly the same thing obsessively, as if it were an obligatory and non-negotiable ritual. And I started to wonder, sweaty from what? Stinky from what? What was she doing that left her in that state? I also noticed that she was literally glued to her cell phone in an obsessive and paranoid way, 24 hours a day. She always left the device face down when putting it on any surface, always took it to the bathroom, even to pee, and always slept with the phone under her pillow or hugging it. If I approached when she was using the cell phone, even just to get a glass of water, she would quickly put the device away or change the screen with nervous movements. "It is just Facebook nonsense," she would say without looking at me. "A woman wasting time with silly social media gossip, you know how it is." But I clearly saw that it was not social media on the screen. It was private messages, individual conversations, that she absolutely did not want me to see, not even a glimpse of. During this extremely tense period, Cassidy also began to be exaggeratedly affectionate, in a way that seemed completely forced, theatrical, and artificial. She would smother me with wet kisses when she got home. She would tell me she loved me desperately several times a day for no specific reason. She would make extremely elaborate plans for our future that seemed rehearsed, memorized word for word. "When you fully retire from the business and you do not have to worry about work anymore, we are going to travel the world," she would say, hugging me in an almost desperate and suffocating way. "I want to see romantic Paris, historic Rome, cosmopolitan New York, luxurious Dubai. I want to enjoy every precious second by your side, my lifelong love, my Prince Charming." But there was something extremely artificial about all that affection, like a gigantic, corrosive guilt disguised as excessive, compensatory love. She also started talking about money in a much more direct, persistent, and specific way than at any previous point in our relationship. She would ask for the exact amounts I earned per month from investments, what the specific totals were for each investment, how much I had in each bank, if I had thought about buying more properties to diversify the assets, if it would not be crucial to build a much larger financial reserve for medical emergencies. "I am just extremely worried about our financial future, Hal," she would explain with a seriousness that frightened and unnerved me. "What if someday you need very expensive medical treatment? What if there is a national economic crisis that affects our investments? What if we need urgent money for an emergency? You need to have a lot of money very well saved and protected for those unpredictable situations." The concern seemed genuine on the surface, but the constant timing and obsessive insistence on this topic always left me with a very strange and disturbing feeling in my stomach. One Tuesday night, I woke up in the middle of the night, around 3 in the morning, to go to the bathroom and noticed that Cassidy was not in bed beside me. The spot was cold, as if she had been out for quite some time. I went to look for her throughout the house and found her in the living room, sitting in complete darkness, quietly and concentratedly using my personal computer. The screen was open to sites I could not clearly identify in the dark, but it seemed to be some kind of medical or chemical research with technical texts. When she noticed my presence, she quickly closed everything with desperate movements and said she had terrible insomnia for days, that she was just randomly browsing the internet to pass the time and try to relax her mind. "Go back to bed, honey," she whispered nervously and hastily. "I will be there too. Just a few more minutes to see if I get sleepy." But she stayed in the living room for over an hour and a half after that, before going to bed. The next day, when I discreetly went to check, the entire computer history was completely erased. Clean, as if it had never been used. The phone conversations also became extremely mysterious and genuinely started making me paranoid. Several times a day, I would find her whispering on the phone, speaking softly, and she would always hang up abruptly when I appeared in the room, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. It was just the stylist rescheduling the haircut appointment, or the new neighbor asking for a brownie recipe, or my cousin needing to vent about the problem she is having with her drunk husband. She always had a ready, immediate explanation. But I started noticing that those extremely mysterious calls always happened at exactly the same times every day, as if they were scheduled meetings, fixed appointments, planned gatherings. And the way she spoke during those calls, softly, whispering, nervously looking around, with her hand partially covering her mouth, turning her body to hide, definitely did not sound like casual, carefree conversation between friends or relatives. What worried me most deeply and obsessed me every night was the radical and terrifying change in her gaze when she thought I was not paying attention. Before, throughout all the happy early years of our marriage, when Cassidy looked at me, I saw genuine, overflowing affection, true and sincere admiration, unconditional and passionate love shining brightly in her eyes. Now there was something completely different, something that gave me the chills and nightmares, something calculating, cold as ice, evaluative, predatory, as if she were constantly analyzing, studying, measuring, planning something very specific and dangerous related to me. Sometimes I would catch her staring at me intently when she thought I was distracted reading the newspaper, watching television, or using my phone, with an expression on her face that I could not fully decipher, but that gave me genuine chills down my spine and made me feel like prey, being studied by a hungry predator. It was as if she were meticulously studying my every move, every habit, every reaction, every weakness, every vulnerability, mentally noting and cataloging my schedules, my routine, my food preferences, my physical and emotional weak spots, my fears, my insecurities. There were genuinely terrifying moments when I felt like a wild animal being watched by an expert hunter who was meticulously planning the exact moment to attack, calculating the best strategy for the kill. This dark and terrifying sensation was making me increasingly anxious, sleepless, suspicious, and completely paranoid. All those disturbing and sinister signs were accumulating in my head, like pieces of an extremely dark and menacing puzzle that I could not, or perhaps did not want to, fully put together, because I instinctively knew the final image would be absolutely terrifying. My naturally trusting nature and my still-in-love heart fought desperately against my sharp instinct as an experienced business owner. That same instinct that for decades warned me when something was not right in business, when a partner was plotting a betrayal against me, when a situation was too dangerous to ignore or underestimate. I desperately wanted to believe that I was being completely paranoid, that it was just natural jealousy and understandable insecurity from an older man, married to a young, beautiful woman full of life and opportunities. I tried daily to convince myself that Cassidy loved me truly and sincerely, that all those strange and worrying behaviors had completely innocent and reasonable explanations, that I was creating problems and conspiracies where none simply existed. But deep down in my terrified heart, an increasingly loud and persistent voice obsessively whispered that something terrible, something extremely dangerous and potentially fatal, was being meticulously prepared against me in the shadows. And that dark, prophetic voice, which I desperately tried to silence every night before sleeping, would become deafening and completely impossible to ignore on the fateful night of our 5th wedding anniversary, when all those seemingly harmless small signs would transform into the most shocking, most dangerous, most terrifying, and most revealing discovery of my entire life. The night of our 5th wedding anniversary arrived on a Friday in October. Cassidy spent the entire day preparing a special surprise. She said she wanted to have an unforgettable celebration to mark this important date. She woke up early, went to the farmer's market to buy fresh ingredients, and spent hours in the kitchen preparing every detail. The smell coming from the kitchen was different from usual, more intense, with seasonings I could not fully identify. When I got home from the office late in the afternoon, I found the house transformed into a romantic setting worthy of a movie. The dining table was beautifully set, with a lace tablecloth I had never seen. Scented candles lit everywhere. Red flowers in strategically placed vases, and crystal glasses I had kept for years. "Surprise, my love," she exclaimed when she saw me, running to hug me with an enthusiasm that seemed almost exaggerated. I prepared everything with so much care for our special day. She was wearing an elegant black dress that enhanced her beauty, impeccably made up, and scented with that French perfume I had given her the year before. "You look absolutely stunning," I said sincerely, because she truly was dazzling. "What a wonderful table you set." Cassidy smiled brightly, but there was something in her eyes that I could not fully decipher. An anxiety, an expectation that went beyond the normal excitement of an anniversary. "I made your favorite dish," she announced proudly, leading me to my chair. "That beef tenderloin with perfectly fluffy risotto and crispy asparagus. I spent the whole afternoon preparing it. I used special ingredients I bought at a different spice shop. I am sure you are going to love it." The dish was beautifully presented, with an appetizing appearance and an aroma that dominated the entire room. But when I sat down and she served a generous portion onto my plate, something immediately caught my attention. The smell, despite being appetizing, had a strange background, a subtle odor I could not identify. It was as if something were mixed into the sauce that should not be there. "What different seasoning did you use?" I asked curiously, bringing my face closer to the plate. "It has an aroma I cannot quite place." "Oh, that is the chef's secret," she quickly replied with a smile that seemed slightly forced. "I used some exotic spices the seller recommended. He said it would give it a more refined flavor. You will love it, I am sure." She served a very small portion onto her own plate, much smaller than normal. "I actually ate a heavy lunch earlier while I was cooking," she explained when I noticed the difference. "I tasted it so much during the preparation that I am not very hungry now." I picked up my fork to start eating, but that strange smell continued to bother me. It was a subtle chemical odor, as if some cleaning product were mixed into the food, but disguised by the strong seasonings. My instinct, the same one that saved me from several dangerous business situations, began to sound the alarm. "Are you sure those spices are fresh?" I asked hesitantly with the fork in my hand. Cassidy became visibly nervous at my hesitation. "Hal, you are becoming too paranoid," she said with poorly disguised irritation. "I spent the entire day preparing this with love. I bought the best ingredients, and you are sitting there being suspicious as if I were going to poison you. That is offensive." She forced a laugh, but her eyes showed genuine anxiety. "Eat now before it gets cold, honey. Reheated food loses all its flavor." At that moment, a sudden memory flashed through my mind. I remembered all the recent times she had cooked dishes with strange flavors. How upset she always got when I did not eat everything, all the questions about my will, about the life insurance, about my health. I remembered the lie about the medical appointment, the mysterious calls, the strange behavior. Everything began to connect in my head, like pieces of a macabre puzzle. "I need to go to the bathroom quickly," I said, getting up from the chair. "I will be right back. Do not touch my plate." I went to the bathroom, but my mind was racing wildly. Was I being overly paranoid? Was I imagining danger where none existed? But that chemical smell in the food was real. It was not my imagination. And her behavior in the last few months had been too odd to be a coincidence. When I returned to the dining room, in an impulsive decision that perhaps saved my life, I took advantage of a moment when Cassidy's back was turned, lighting a candle that had gone out, and quickly switched our plates. My heart was pounding. My hands were trembling. But I managed to make the switch without her noticing. I sat down again, as if nothing had happened. "Now, let us celebrate our anniversary," I said, feigning naturalness as I picked up my fork. "The food really looks delicious." I started eating what was on my plate, which was originally hers, while discreetly observing her reactions. She also started eating, talking animatedly about our years together, about future plans, about how happy we were. For about 5 minutes, everything seemed normal. We ate, we talked, we toasted with wine. I pretended to savor the food that was on my plate, praising the seasonings, expressing my gratitude for her effort. Cassidy seemed relaxed, satisfied, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Did you really like the flavor?" she asked. "You did not find any seasoning strange?" "It is perfect," I lied, watching her every move. "It really is different, but refined. You have exceeded all expectations." She smiled radiantly, but continued to eat slowly, chewing well, as if savoring every bite. It was then that something terrible began to happen, confirming all my darkest suspicions. Cassidy started with a small cough, as if something had irritated her throat. "That is strange," she muttered, putting her hand to her neck. "Must be the wine went down the wrong way." But the cough quickly became more frequent and more intense. Within minutes, her face began to turn red, then purplish. She abruptly got up from the chair, knocking over her wine glass. "Water?" she asked, her voice already hoarse and strange. "I need water immediately." She stumbled to the kitchen. I followed her, feigning concern. "What is happening, honey?" I asked, disguising my growing certainty about what was really going on. "Are you feeling unwell?" She drank water straight from the faucet, but it was not helping at all. On the contrary, she was worsening rapidly. "Hal, take me to the hospital," she pleaded, her eyes wide with terror. "Something is terribly wrong. My throat is closing up. I cannot breathe properly." Foam began to appear at the corners of her mouth. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. It was in that moment of total desperation that Cassidy began to say things I never imagined I would hear. Between convulsions and shortness of breath, between pleas for help and moments of absolute panic, the most shocking and terrifying truth of my life began to be revealed, word by word. "It was for you," she screamed in the midst of desperation, looking at me with a mixture of hatred and terror. "The poison was for you, you old idiot." The words came out like daggers, each one confirming my worst nightmares. "I wanted all your fortune. I wanted to be rid of you once and for all." The confessions continued to pour out amid the convulsions that were overwhelming her body. "Trenton is waiting for me," she mumbled, foaming at the mouth. "We were going to run away together with all your money. We were going to live like kings far from here." The name Trenton resonated in my head. Who was Trenton? I had never heard of him. "We planned everything in detail for months," she continued to reveal between spasms. "The imported poison that mimics a natural heart attack. No one was going to suspect a thing." Her words were cut short by the increasing difficulty breathing. But the desperate need to confess seemed stronger than the physical pain. "I never truly loved you, you disgusting old man," she spat with a cruelty that chilled my blood. "I just wanted your money, you bastard. You were just a means to get what I wanted." The mask of the dedicated wife had completely fallen, revealing a creature I never truly knew. "You deserve to die," she said, amid increasingly violent convulsions. An old, rich, and lonely man was perfect for our plan. Every word was a terrifying revelation about the years I had lived being deceived, manipulated, studied like prey. At that moment, watching Cassidy writhe on the kitchen floor, vomiting foam and revealing the entire sordid truth of our marriage, I understood that I had just escaped death by a thread, and that the woman I loved with all my heart had never truly existed. While Cassidy writhed on the kitchen floor amidst increasingly violent convulsions, I stood there, watching with a calmness that surprised me. All the suspicions of the last few months had been confirmed in the worst possible way. The woman I loved, who took care of me, who shared my bed for 5 years, had coldly tried to murder me to steal my fortune. "Call an ambulance, for God's sake," she pleaded between spasms, her eyes wide with terror and desperation. "Help me, Hal. Do not let me die like this." Tears streamed down her face, mixed with the foam that continued to come out of her mouth. It was a terrifying sight, but I felt an inner coldness I never imagined I possessed. "Why would I do that?" I asked calmly, squatting beside her without making any move to help. "You just confessed that you wanted to kill me, Cassidy. That you never loved me. That I was just a target for you and your lover." My voice came out strangely serene, as if I were discussing the weather. "I was delirious," she screamed desperately, trying to drag herself across the floor toward the phone. "None of what I said was true. The poison is making me say crazy things." But we both knew she was lying. Everything she had confessed made perfect sense with her behavior in recent months. "Think carefully about what you are doing," she pleaded with an increasingly hoarse and strange voice. "You will go to jail for failure to render aid. You will ruin your life over a silly argument." She tried to manipulate me even in that moment of agony, using the same techniques she had probably used for years. "You know what the most ironic thing is, Cassidy?" I said, sitting down in a kitchen chair to be at her level. "You ate your own poison, the poison you specially prepared to kill me." She looked at me with a mixture of hatred and terror, finally understanding that I knew exactly what had happened. "I knew," I confessed, watching the convulsions grow more intense. "I saw your texts a few times when you forgot your cell phone unlocked. I found out who your lover Trenton was through the messages. I knew you were planning something against me." The words came out with a coldness that frightened me, but also gave me a strange sense of justice. "I changed my will 3 months ago," I continued to reveal while she was agonizing. "I completely cut you out of the inheritance. All the money is going to charity now, to institutions that care for abandoned seniors. You will not see a single dollar." Her eyes widened even further, if that were possible, understanding that she had lost everything. "I also recorded several of your confessions," I partially lied, wanting to see her suffer more. "Your veiled threats, your suspicious talks about my death, your plans with Trenton. It is all documented and stored in a safe place." In reality, I did not have recordings, but I wanted her to die knowing her crimes would be exposed. "I installed hidden cameras in the house 2 weeks ago." I invented another cruel lie. "I recorded you preparing the poison today. I recorded you specially seasoning my plate. I recorded everything, Cassidy. Your attempted murder is filmed in high definition." I wanted her final moments to be of total desperation. "Please," she cried with the little voice she had left. "I will tell you everything. I will turn Trenton in. I will give back what I took from you. Just save me." but it was already too late for negotiations. The poison she had prepared for me was doing its deadly work on her body. "Why would I save someone who tried to kill me?" I asked rhetorically. "You planned my death in detail. You studied my habits, my routine, my vulnerabilities. You pretended to love me while calculating the best way to murder me." Every word was a cold statement of the facts. "You are a monster," she managed to say between convulsions. "You are letting me die." The irony of the accusation made me laugh for the first time since everything began. "I am the monster? You tried to poison me at our anniversary dinner, and I am the monster?" "Cassidy," I said, getting up from the chair and looking at her one last time. "You ate the poison you prepared for me. That is literally your poison killing you. It is poetic justice." Her convulsions were becoming more spaced out, her eyes starting to lose focus. The last 15 minutes were agonizing for her and revealing for me. I discovered she had a lover for over 3 years, that they had meticulously planned the murder, that she had never felt anything genuine for me besides greed. Everything we experienced together had been an elaborate and convincing farce. When Cassidy finally stopped moving, her eyes fixed on the kitchen ceiling, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief at having escaped death, sadness at discovering that 5 years of my life had been a complete lie. I waited a few more minutes to be absolutely certain she was dead. Then, with the same composure I had maintained throughout her agony, I picked up the phone and called 911. "Hello, I need an ambulance urgently," I said with the voice of a distraught husband. "My wife suddenly became ill during our anniversary dinner. I think she is gone. I do not know what happened." My performance was convincing, my voice trembling just the right amount. When the paramedics and police arrived, they found the scene exactly as I intended. A husband in shock next to his deceased wife, remnants of a romantic dinner on the table, an apparent tragedy on what should have been a celebration of love. The subsequent investigation was faster than I expected. Forensics discovered poison in Cassidy's body, but they also found something very interesting: her fingerprints all over the packaging of the chemical product. She had purchased the poison in person at a veterinary supply store, using fake documents, but security cameras clearly identified her. When the police traced the substance's origin, they discovered that Cassidy had researched for months on poisons that mimicked natural heart attacks. Her computer history, which she thought she had deleted, was recovered by forensic technicians. It was all there. Searches on how to kill without leaving traces, on inheritance, on life insurance. During my statement, I showed investigators the evidence I had secretly gathered in recent months. The text messages I managed to save when she forgot her phone unlocked. The proof of her lies about where she went when she left the house. The new will I had made, removing her entirely from the inheritance. She had been acting very strangely, I explained to the police with tears in my eyes that were not entirely fake. She kept asking questions about my will, about the life insurance. She always wanted to know about my health. I thought it was a wife's concern, but now I understand she was planning my death. The case was officially classified as accidental, self-inflicted poisoning. The conclusion was that Cassidy tried to murder her husband, but ended up consuming her own poison by mistake. Accidental suicide with premeditated attempted homicide. I was completely exonerated, considered the victim of an attempted murder foiled by the murderer's own incompetence. 2 weeks after the funeral, Trenton showed up at my door. He was a man in his early 50s, considerably younger than me, handsome in a vulgar way. He did not know Cassidy was dead. Apparently, she had promised to meet him after the special dinner to run away together with my money. "Where is Cassidy?" he asked aggressively when I opened the door. She was supposed to meet me and did not show up. Where is the money she was going to get? The man's audacity stunned me. He actually thought he could just walk into my house and demand the money his accomplice had promised to steal from me. Cassidy is dead, I said simply, watching his reaction. She died poisoned at our anniversary dinner. His face instantly went white. The police discovered your entire plot. I know he was her lover for years. I know you planned my murder together. I showed him all the evidence I had given to the police. The texts, the plans, the poison searches. If you do not disappear from my sight in 5 minutes, I said calmly, I will hand over your name and address to the investigators. You will be arrested as an accomplice to attempted murder. Trenton ran from my doorstep and never appeared again. I later learned he moved out of state that same week, likely afraid of being discovered and arrested. The coward abandoned his deceased lover and fled to save his own skin. In the following months, I began to completely rebuild my life. I sold the mansion on the Upper East Side, which held so many bad memories, so many lies. I bought a simple house in a quiet suburban town, far from where I had lived with Cassidy. I wanted to start over, without the ghosts of the past haunting me. I donated 90% of my fortune to charitable organizations, especially those that care for the elderly. I kept just enough to live with dignity and simplicity for the rest of my days. The money that Cassidy coveted so much, for which she studied me and planned to kill me for years, simply no longer existed. It was at one of those charitable organizations that I met Maria, a 68-year-old widow and former public school teacher. She worked as a volunteer, caring for seniors abandoned by their families. She had a genuinely good heart, a sincere smile, a true love for life. Maria knew nothing about my former fortune. She only knew me as Hal, a simple gentleman who also volunteered. We fell in love slowly, without rushing, building a relationship based on real companionship, not financial interest. She loves me for who I am, not for what I have. Today we live together in a simple house with a rose garden that she tends with care. We eat our meals without fear of poison. We sleep peacefully, without fear of betrayal. It is a genuine, late, but true love. For the first time in many years, I am genuinely happy. I sometimes still think about Cassidy, especially when I see news reports about crimes of passion or marriage scams. I think about how she pretended to love me for 5 entire years, how she studied every detail of my life to plan my death, and how she almost succeeded in killing me if I had not switched the plates that fateful night. The irony of it all still strikes me today. Cassidy died exactly the way she planned to kill me. The poison she prepared so carefully, calculating the exact dose to simulate a heart attack, ended up killing her instead. If she had loved me for real, she would be alive today and truly rich. She would not have needed scams or murder. The ultimate lesson I took from this chilling experience is not about mistrusting love, but about empowering yourself the moment doubt first whispers in your ear. Had I dismissed those early persistent feelings of unease, that strange metallic taste, the forced affection, the obsessive questions about my assets, I would not be here today. The true danger in life is not the monster that attacks in the dark, but the one you allow to operate in the light of your trust. It took the horrific realization that my life was a meticulously constructed lie to finally break the cycle of self-imposed ignorance. When you suspect a betrayal that threatens your very existence, you must overcome the fear of being wrong or paranoid and act decisively. Finding true contentment later in life with Maria taught me that genuine love is built on transparent companionship and shared values, not on a financial calculation. My final act of justice, donating the money and walking away from the life of opulence, was my true liberation. It proved that my worth was never in the $6 million, but in the strength of character I had nearly allowed greed to extinguish.